For college football fans, the NFL draft is kind of the final piece of the puzzle from the previous season. And we're closing that chapter and looking ahead to next year. And that includes the 2025 NFL draft. Today, we are taking a look at some of the top prospects at each position for next year's draft. Now, everyone's going to start with the quarterback position. That's not a surprise. Everyone needs a quarterback at some point, and it's interesting to see how this class stacks up against this past year's class. When you look at next year, I think a lot of people have some concerns, but every year it feels like there are concerns outside of maybe one or two guys. I think that there are certain players like a Shedeur Sanders that everyone knows, that everyone expects him to be a top 10 pick. There are a lot of people who think he'll be the first overall pick, and you see the talent. He has the arm talent to make things happen. He's just playing on a Colorado team that's very polarizing and struggled a lot this past year. Now, if he can get more time to throw, I think he can do a lot of great things. Colorado has a lot of talent at the skill positions. They address the offensive line in the transfer portal. It's just a matter of can those players actually step up. Other names to keep in mind. Cam Ward, I think, is going to have a special season with Miami. I think that he is going to surprise a lot of people. He could be a guy that sneaks up and becomes the QB1 of this class. Carson Beck has a lot of talent too. I think that he got really comfortable last year, and he's going to evolve and develop his game even more in 2024. Quinn Ewers is another name on that board as well. I think that he is in an offense that has a ton of talent. Even when you lose Adonai Mitchell, you lose a Xavier Worthy or Jatavian Sanders at tight end, they're still guys they need to replace, but the talent they have returning, when you look at guys like Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, they have plenty of talent to help him out. It's just a matter of can he put it all together and can he become a first round pick, a solidified, a consensus first round pick. There's a lot of movement that's still happening, I think. This is definitely a group that we'll see plenty of movement as the year goes on. And again, when you look at this list, I think a lot of people believe there's not a good or great player in this group, but every year someone emerges, every year someone has a great season. And I think one of these guys will be in that group. Other guys to keep in mind, Jackson Dart took a little bit of a step forward last year. If he can put together another good season, that's someone who could rise up on these draft boards. People really like Connor Wegman from Texas A&M, has a good frame and has the ability to sling it. So keep an eye on him. Drew Aller has a huge frame, definitely a guy that will gather attention, will definitely get first round attention simply because of his frame. He just needs to put together more impressive tape. If he's not able to do that, we might see him again in college football next year. But if he does have a good year, Penn State's in good hands. Jalen Milroe is another name that's intriguing, more of a runner than a passer, but we've seen some good things from him over the past year and even in the spring game this year. Don't take too much weight into that, but Jalen Milroe is someone to keep an eye on. Dylan Gabriel probably won't be a first round pick, but he is a reliable player that is very accurate, knows how to make those short to intermediate throws. Those are pretty deep ball. Even if he doesn't have the best arm strength, he can throw a really nice ball. So he's someone who could be a quality player later in the draft. A name that is very underrated, but we've been talking about for a while is Garrett Nussmeier. We haven't seen him on the field because he's been stuck as a backup. Now he gets the first chance in his career to showcase why he is going to be such an elite talent. And LSU, if he's able to do that, will have a really good season. Running back is tough because I love so many of these players. There's so many exciting guys in this list, but because of how the NFL has developed and changed, the running back position doesn't carry the same value. A guy like Ashton Genty is a valuable weapon, though, in this new age of football. You're looking at a guy who can get it done between the tackles. The question is just to me, do teams trust his size to handle life in the trenches? He's also shown to be a good receiver. So that's definitely something that goes in his favor. And he's an explosive athlete who can make big plays. He can hurdle over guys. They'll be really fun to watch. Ollie Gordon, the reigning Doak Walker Award winner, comes back to college football for another year. He's another name to keep an eye on, a good frame that will help him be physical once again and at the next level. Ohio State has two guys to keep an eye on, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. You're looking at two guys that are different in how they run the football. Henderson has more of that speed. Judkins is more of that downhill runner, but they both have the size to be able to handle life in the trenches. So keep an eye on those. Devin Neal's an underrated player out of Kansas. He was a big reason why they had so much success last year. Taj Brooks, same reason at Texas Tech, a little bit bigger frame at 230 pounds, someone who is going to be a downhill runner, really fun to watch. Marion Hampton, I think, is one that is going to rise up really quick in a lot of people's draft boards. When you're talking about way too early, this is someone who doesn't necessarily have that breakaway speed, but he has the frame and the size to be able to handle life at the next level. Donovan Edwards is intriguing with Blake Corum gone. It's now his backfield. He gets to be the go-to guy. What does Michigan do this year offensively is a big question, but also what are they going to do with Donovan Edwards? He's an explosive athlete who can make big plays, but it's just a matter of how they utilize him, whether it's running the football or getting him out of the backfield in the passing attack as well. Damian Martinez is looking for a new team, and maybe at the time of this being out, he has picked a new team. It sounds like Miami is the front runner, but we will see the Oregon State transfer. Again, not a guy who's going to run away from people, but he is a physical player who can make a NFL roster and make life easier for the team that he goes to. Jay Nott is an underrated pick here. Yeah, some of these guys, it's more like in a later round pick, maybe second or third round. But Jay Nott is an explosive athlete who can make plays for his future team as well. Now, wide receiver is interesting because I don't know if there right now is a ton of top tier talent, at least proven or consensus top tier talent. I think we have some really explosive players that are looking to showcase what they can do. It's just a matter of are they actually able to put it all together? A guy like Tedero McMillan will lead the way at 6'5, 210 pounds, and he is going to be really fun to watch. He's a great 50-50 ball winner. He has an incredible catch radius. He makes life very easy for his quarterbacks. And when you look at what they have in Noah Fafita coming back, this is an offense that should thrive even under a new leadership in Brent Brennan. Luther Burden is a name, the former five-star, has been on everyone's radar for a while and had his first breakout season in 2023. Travis Hunter, a two-way guy. What position he'll play? A lot of people think that wide receiver is his better position, so we'll keep an eye on him. Isaiah Bond hasn't put up a ton of big numbers, but he is a speedster that will get a lot of attention. The NFL looks for traits, and Bond has that speed, kind of like an Xavier Worthy, where you can blow past guys. It's just a matter of can you be consistent? Can you be a good route runner? Bond has shown that at times, and now we're hoping that 1,000-yard season is in his future. Evan Stewart transfers to Oregon, another guy to keep an eye on. And then when we look at the underrated talents here. There's a lot of underrated talents that have good frames or they have incredible work ethic and they have good potential because they're on a group of five team. Torrey Harden and Ricky White are two guys to keep an eye on. Torrey Harden comes from Colorado State, has a solid frame at 6'2", 190 pounds, and he is someone who is a competitor, very difficult to guard, and he'll be really fun to watch. His route running is something to keep an eye on. Ricky White is super underrated. He's in that Brennan Marion offense, an explosive offense that should be able to put up a ton of points. Nick Anderson is not a name that is well known right now, but at 6'4" and 200 pounds, he is someone to keep an eye on. He is someone who could be a really, really good player, and he's going to be a force for Oklahoma. Jamal Banks, same thing at 6'4" and 205 pounds. He transfers to Nebraska from Wake Forest, and he'll be fun to watch. Hopefully that offense can get him more involved. We'll definitely see. Savion Williams has the frame that teams will want. It's just a matter of can TCU get him in good positions. There are some people who believe that he was misused last year, and we'll see what happens with Josh Hoover coming back at quarterback. But Savion Williams is a big body at 6'5", 225 pounds. Tight end is another interesting position. I think there are a lot of talented players in this group. It starts with Colston Loveland, a player who was utilized a lot more in Michigan's offense just due to the nature of this group. And I think that we'll see what they use him like this year. If they can get him the ball more often, we will see. But this is a tight end group that's very intriguing to me. Someone like Loveland obviously can lead the way, but you have plenty of talent that will push him for that top spot. Mason Taylor is a name to keep an eye on. He has that NFL history in the family. Caden Prescorn transferred from Memphis to Ole Miss, had a big year for the Ole Miss Rebels, is expected to have another big year. Luke Lachey is another guy to keep an eye on from Iowa, keeps that Iowa tight end tradition going. Not the greatest stats, but you're going to rely more on the film and his limited reps. You're just going to look for the efficiency. He's someone definitely that will definitely rise up and be part of this conversation. RJ Maryland out of SMU, more of that Y type tight end where he's more of the pass catcher. but he is definitely an effort guy when it comes to blocking. Obviously, that will be the area he needs to improve on the most, but he is definitely someone who will be intriguing. With Brock Bowers gone, Oscar Delp is another name to keep an eye on. Bryson Nesbitt, same thing in North Carolina, though he's in kind of a deeper tight end group. So standing out in that group will be difficult. Aronde Gatson, when you look at what happened last year, that injury obviously hurt him. That's going to be the biggest concern for most people. If he can get back to fully healthy and do what he was doing before, then I don't think any team is going to have any concerns. Tyler Warren, underrated player out of Penn State, has freakish traits, I think, and that's someone who will rise up, I think, as more people get eyes on him. Mitchell Evans continues a interesting tight end tradition that Notre Dame. I think that he is going to be really fun to watch. Had his opportunities last year, showed some flashes, and now gets a full season to do the same thing. Offensive line is tough because there's so many guys to go through, especially with the three positions. There are a number of players that are really intriguing. Kelvin Banks from Texas is someone who a lot of people thought could have gone pro this year, could have been considered a potential first round pick. Next year, he should be a first round pick. Same thing with Will Campbell. Will Campbell was thrown into the fire, and all he's done is compete. He has done his best. Even when he struggled, he is still fighting for position. He is still fighting to be a good player, and that's something that'll be really helpful for him in this season. Tyler Booker is a massive player at 6'5", 352 pounds, someone who could be an absolute monster on the inside. Emory Jones, again, LSU has really intriguing offense. Even with they lose a ton, they lose a Heisman Trophy winner in Jane Daniels. You lose 2 first-round picks in Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors at wide receiver. That's going to hurt, but this is still an offense that I think does really well. Tate Ratledge is a name that is going to be really high on people's lists. He is an absolute mauler on the inside for Georgia. And this Georgia offensive line, even with losing Amarius Mims and Cedric Van Pran, I think that they are going to be just fine. Josh Connolly for Oregon, same thing. This is a group that it continues losing first round NFL talent, I should just say, but they continue to churn out guys at that position. Jaden Roberts went from a relatively unknown player to a starter in a quick amount of time for Alabama, and now he's in a new system in you look at what they have. You look at what Washington had in the past year. They won the Joe Moore Award for best offensive line, and now this team it should be really interesting to watch with new leadership. This offense is going to be a little bit different. You actually trust this staff maybe a little bit more to be more explosive, and that'll be really fun to see how this group looks very different. Alabama football is going to change. And it won't be any different up front. It's still going to be a physical group. It's just going to look a little bit different in terms of what they're trying to scheme. Francis Mauigoa is one of the more underrated players. Miami, if they have the year that a lot of people expect them to, he is going to be a name to know. He will be one of the top players at the tackle position. So keep an eye on him. We talked about Georgia, Ernest Green, another player that will help Ratledge, even with the guys that they lose. Really exciting player to watch. Josh Simmons, Ohio State's offensive line, if they can take a step forward, that team is going to be dangerous in 2024. The edge position is very interesting because there are a couple guys that we'll talk about who are at the position for the first time or just started. And then you also have other guys that can move inside to tackle and outside at the edge position. Harold Perkins is the one that everyone's going to talk about. The LSU linebacker edge player. We'll see where he plays, whether it's linebacker or edge. We saw him 2 years ago on the edge as a freshman, absolute menace, explosive athlete around the edge. And now they put him back at linebacker. I think either way, he's fine. They'll give him the flexibility to move around, and he's someone who can make an impact. He did in his first year as a linebacker. It just has that knack to be disruptive. Same thing with Abdul Carter. Now Carter played linebacker last year, and now they are switching him to edge because they lose Adisa Isaac. You lose Chop Robinson. He is someone that will make an impact for this team. James Pierce is explosive out of Tennessee, kind of an underrated player who's rising up in draft boards already. We're already having draft discussions about him. He's in a lot of 2025 NFL mock drafts. So he is definitely a name to keep an eye on. Texas A&M got Cassius Howell and Nick Scordon from the transfer portal. Now, Scordon is one of those guys that is a fan favorite, and he's already making an impact. Some think he is the best transfer portal addition of any team. So he's someone to keep an eye on. I think that you look at what they have in terms of size. He could be one that is flexible. When you look at what they have in Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart on the inside, you are pretty much set, but you also get depth with certain other players. Patrick Payton is someone to keep an eye on in terms of length. A very, very long player, has good size. You might want to add a little bit more to his frame if you're going to talk about durability, but definitely a long player that's really exciting. Ohio State has two guys to keep an eye on, but I think Jack Sawyer is the better edge player of the two between him and JT Tuimoloau. Jack Sawyer is someone who has been waiting for his turn, and he got a chance last year, and I think he's just getting started. Kamon Rucker, underrated player, maybe a little bit undersized compared to the rest of these guys, but when you're looking at production, he had his best year last year, came back to North Carolina, and is hoping to have an even better season. Michael Williams is a potential top 5 pick. We'll see what happens. Last year, his production took a little bit of a dip, but this is still an absolute menace who has the traits that you really like, can play on the inside, can move out to the outside. So we'll see what happens with him. Interior defensive line is a really fun group as well. I don't know. It's just so early that the excitement level is at its highest. Honestly, this is how it goes until the season begins and we see guys fluctuate. This is a lot of anticipation, a lot of projection, but these are guys who are really exciting. Mason Graham leads the way. We saw what he could do at a high level in the college football playoff and for Michigan the pretty much the entire year. Him and Kenneth Grant are two of the more exciting players, bring really good size and explosiveness with them. And Michigan's defense is in good hands despite the amount of losses they sustained. Walter Nolan, a player who transfers from Texas A&M to Ole Miss. Man, Texas A&M, granted, they probably didn't need to add some of these guys in the transfer portal, but this defensive line is already stacked and they lost one of their better players. Jamari Caldwell, a name that is currently underrated, but rising up I think amongst some people, it's just a matter of how many people get to his film. The Houston transfer was a menace for the Cougars, and now he's going to do the same thing for Oregon. Deion Walker has incredible size. That's 6'6", 340 pounds. You're looking at a guy who can get the job done, underrated quickness as well. We talked about Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart for Texas A&M. Those are two guys to keep an eye on as well. I think when you look at Notre Dame, they have a duo led by Howard Cross the third. He is another guy that maybe a little bit undersized, but still a productive player that can get the job done. Tyler Onyedem is another name that is good size, but definitely not as recognized for a lot of people. Definitely a name to keep an eye on this year. Jaheim Otis didn't have the greatest stats again either, but again, the defensive tackle position kind of flies under the radar in terms of box score. So it's about the film, it's about the traits, and Jaheim Otis has the size and the traits that you like. It's just a matter of can he put it all together. Tyleik Williams, a guy who could have gone in the first or second round when we went into the 2023 season, he's looking to get back to that point as well. Linebacker is full of athletes. When you look at what they have returning, I think you have a lot of playmakers, athletic players that can get the job done. It's just a matter of which position will they play. Barrett Carter is a name that will stand out. I think that he could have gone pro this year, been a first or second round pick, but decided to come back and improve upon his game. Clemson is better off because of that. I think that his game could use a little bit more experience. So that was, I think, a good pick for him. Good decision. Jay Higgins from Iowa, just another Iowa linebacker that's going to get the job done. An incredible amount of production from last year. Danny Stutzman, same thing. A tackling machine, someone who has good size at 6'3", 229 pounds. So how teams utilize him will be interesting. Deontay Lawson, linebacker for Alabama, a little bit on the leaner side of things, but athletic enough to cover in space, still can get after the quarterback if needed and be disruptive. Justin Jacobs, same thing. Production maybe not there as you would like, but someone who's athletic who can get the job done. Jacob Manu is undersized at 5'11", but that doesn't matter. He's able to show a lot of good power. He's productive, and Arizona's defense is going to be really fun to watch because they have a handful of guys that meet with that criteria of having, undersized, underrated, chip on your shoulder. Smail Mundid, again, another guy who's on the leaner side of things, but he's really good in space. Still productive despite, being that undersized, but he has added weight to his frame. I think that he has done a good job of taking the offseason seriously, and now he gets to showcase what he can do alongside CJ Allen. So that'll be really fun to watch for Georgia. JJ Weaver could play on the edge, could play linebacker, has really good size at 6'5", 241 pounds. The guy who everybody knows as having six fingers on one hand. but he is so good at so many things. I think that he might be one of the better players at this position when it's all said and done. Underrated players, John Pace from UCF, Haley Lawson from Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is expected to be much better this year. They'll be fun to watch. UCF added a couple of Cincinnati transfers. Pace was one of them. Now, whether or not Pace will play linebacker or defensive back remains to be seen, but he has that hybrid skill set to play maybe a hybrid role for a new team, but he can play linebacker, he can play defensive back. It'll be interesting to see what an NFL team does with him. Cornerback might be the more stacked position of this group. There's a lot of players that everyone knows. Obviously, Travis Hunter is the biggest name of this group. Again, where does he play? Does he play wide receiver? Does he play cornerback? That is a big question. Will Johnson's an absolute stud, a big cornerback that is really tough to beat. He has played a lot of good competition too, so nothing's really going to phase him. He probably could have gone pro this year. Benjamin Morrison is an interception machine, a ball hawking corner who knows exactly what to do when the ball is in the air. Same thing with Jabbar Muhammad. Transfers from Washington. Initially was going to go to Texas, I believe, and now he's at Oregon. He will be really fun to watch. Underrated name, 7 interceptions last year for Ricardo Hallman. The Wisconsin Badger is really good, really fun to watch, and Wisconsin is an underrated team. Speaking of underrated, Cam Lockridge, a guy who, again, knows what to do when the ball's in the air. Same thing with Kansas, Kobe Bryant. There's a lot of guys on this list that know how to get the ball back to their offense. Galen Everett is under a lot of scrutiny, under the spotlight now because he is the guy, but that's just the nature of playing for Georgia. Has nothing to do with him. He's just on a really good team that expects greatness. Justin Wally's another underrated name out of Minnesota, a guy who maybe doesn't have the biggest size, but he is someone who is underrated in terms of skill, shutting guys down. He'll be fun to watch as well. Denzel Burke could be a first round pick. Again, all of these lists are not ranked in any order. It's just a list of 10 guys to keep an eye on. Denzel Burke is one of those guys. I think that he has taken good steps over the last 2 years, and his final season at Ohio State, if it's good enough, he can get back to being a first round pick. And finally, the safety position. This is a fun group to watch as well. Maybe a little bit more development is needed. I think that the depth in this group is probably lacking compared to a lot of other positions. But a guy like Malachi Starks leads us off here. It'll be interesting to see where he plays because when he came to Georgia, he started as a corner, played in the national championship game as a corner as a freshman, and now he's at the safety position. I think that's his better position, honestly, but we'll see what an NFL team thinks about that. We'll see if they agree. We'll see if they want to move him around, but he is a good safety for Georgia. Xavier Watts had a huge year, 7 interceptions for Notre Dame last year. A little bit undersized, but because he knows what he's doing when the ball is in the air. Malachi Moore could have gone pro. It seems like every year for the past 3 or 4 years. He's gonna have to go pro this year, so we'll see where he lands. Xavier Nwankpa chose Iowa over a number of Power Five schools, and he has good size. I think that he is set for a big year, and he could be someone that rises up in this group. Billy Bowman had a big year. Finally, has a little bit a smaller frame, but again, he is someone who's an experienced player. He knows what he's doing and it'll be interesting to see where he lands. Kevin Winston Jr. fits in that same category. 6'2", 204 pounds. I think that he's a little bit bigger, obviously, than Bowman, but I think he fits in that category of knows what he's doing, has been playing for a little while, and he'll be really fun to watch for Penn State on a defense that should be really good. Lathan Ransom, another experienced player. The production obviously isn't great, but that's not the whole story. You'll keep an eye on him for sure. A name that I don't think is going to be anywhere near day one or day two is Shiloh Sanders. Now he has the attention. He's under the spotlight because of who he is, who his dad is, who his brother is, and he definitely gets more attention because of them. I don't think he's nearly as talented as either or as his brother, but I don't think he is going to fall out of a day three. I think that he's a day three pick. He plays the game without a ton of confidence. Obviously, he talks a lot of trash, as people know, but you're going to be hard pressed to find a guy who's more confident in his abilities. Keon Saab transfers to Alabama from Michigan, and he is someone that could fly under the radar. And same thing with Isaiah Nkobia from SMU, 4 interceptions last year. Again, this is a group that the depth may not be there, but there's definitely a lot of talent that could rise up, and maybe we'll have more depth at the end of the season.